slide number 29, and I think we're all here. I can't remember having anybody that we skipped with the new seating chart. I'll tape them anyways. Co means together. So like if you think of cohesive, adhesive means stick, and co means together. So stick together. When something is cohesive, it's that idea where it's staying together. So if you put co in front of dominant, it's going to be dominant together. And so it's kind of a different idea. So far, something that's been dominant has like taken over, right? It's hidden the recessive. See how this is going to be a little bit different when we add that co in front of it. There we go. So when you have a single gene that has more than one dominant allele, so it's like two things are dominant. So we're going to look at a bunch of examples of this. But if you have two dominant options, basically. So an individual who's going to be heterozygous for co-dominant alleles is going to express the phenotype associated with both. Do you have your notes? Finished them online?
Yeah.
All right. So if I look at them, they're totally done?
I'm not listening.
You need to bring them. What if we had an assignment today? Make sure you bring them every day, okay? I'll check tomorrow. Make sure you have them. So blood type is a good example of this. There's actually three alleles. You have A, B, and O, right? And this is actually something that you'll get into a lot with Mr. Trainer when you get to biology. Yes?
Why do we go A, B, O?
I don't know why they don't go A, B, C. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. Might be something we can look up and see. But the A and the B are both dominant. So you might be like AB, or you might be, actually blood is a little bit tricky because there's some other factors involved too. But so these two are the dominant, and then your O is considered the recessive. So you have to be OO to actually show the blood type of recessive for O. You could have AO, BO, which Swarm is, some of you might be getting BO, I don't know. Wear deodorant, nothing. Kidding. Thanks, at least I got one. Okay. All right, so you have a lot of different varieties or options, but if you have A and you have B and they're both present, then you have what's considered an AB blood type. You are compatible with A blood and B blood as well. Okay, so we have a parent here with alleles A and O and a parent with alleles B and O. And so you have AB, you have BO, you have AO, and you have OO. Right? So just following out that Punnett square, which again, I feel really confident that you guys are good at that, as actually doing the Punnett square. So the genotypes here, and then the phenotype would be type A blood and type B blood. This person would experience the co-dominance where they have type A and B together. BO would show just B, AO would show just O, and then our homozygous recessive, OO, would be, that special category of recessive, this is why this is the least common blood type, because it is recessive, and you really kind of have three options for co-dominance, or for dominance, right? A, B, B, or A. So not only do you just have one type for dominance, you actually have, multiple options for dominance. So it's even harder for the recessive to kind of show through. Okay, this is, I think, a little easier to see. Any of the types of questions that I've seen on like the state tests usually deal with like flower color or hair coloring or feather coloring in animals. So these are kind of some more common, like you might see. So cows could be red, which is dominant, big R, it's homozygous dominant. You can have white, which is also dominant, which usually we don't think of white as dominant, but in this case it is. And so you're still homozygous dominant. And then there's something called roan, which is red and white spots together. So you have some red hair and you have some white hair, and they're mixed in on the animal. So you have cattle like this, horses can be like this, even dogs have some of this. You can they call them like red roan. So if they have both dominant letters, both of those traits are going to show one doesn't dominate or like power or cover up the other. That's what happened when we had a recessive. Neither one of them is recessive. So if there's no recessive and they're both there, they're both going to show. Okay, so in cattle and horses, if you cross what we call a purebred, so purebred means it's kind of another name if we're talking with codominance. It's another name for like homozygous dominant. You have the same allele pair. So this is a purebred where it has all red. So it's big R, big R. And then you have purebred, big W, big W. You can get crosses that are hybrids, we call them, or that mixture. Kind of like that idea of something being heterozygous. You have different alleles. So if you think of like purebred dogs, a golden retriever bred to a golden retriever, they have puppies that are 100% golden retriever. Does everybody agree with that? Our world is going crazy for hybrid dogs. Hybrid meaning a mix of two different breeds, right? So like a poodle crossed with a golden retriever. And you get offspring that are called golden doodles, right? They are part 50% golden retriever, 50% poodle. Right, my friend right now has a litter of border collie and poodle, so they call them border doodles. Right, so they are 50% poodle, 50% border collie. Right, that is a hybrid. What about vehicles? Somebody describe to me what a hybrid vehicle is. Braden, was that a hand or you changed your mind? He changed his mind. Gilbert?
Pretty much like an engine and a car in a different year, like 1 year, and another different year.
Not different years. You're right on different motor or kind of power sources, but not different years. Can you add to that?
A car that uses the brakes or accelerating of the engine to charge up a battery for the electric motors.
Okay, so we're talking our normal combustion motor or our electric motor. Good. All right, so you can have a gas or diesel powered vehicle or a pure electric vehicle. And then there's the hybrids where they have the capability to run on the gas or diesel, or they can run on electric, right? So if you have a hybrid, it can run on both the gas or the electric, right? So if you run low, like your batteries are running low and the electric, you don't have to stop and like charge, you can run on the gasoline portion or component of that vehicle, yes.
They use it usually for gas mileage.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which is part of the reason, like, so that we can conserve our fossil fuels and not be using as much gas and diesel. The hybrid, if you think about that, that's kind of probably more familiar in the world that we live in today. There's all kinds of, they call them EVs, right? Electric vehicles. Some are 100% electric, and so they would be a purebred, if we're talking this language, for electric power driven. If it is all gas or diesel, then that is a purebred. If you have a mix, that's when you get the hybrid. Who here is in 4-H maybe? Anybody raise hogs? No? Sometimes we have some people that, I don't know if they do the same thing with goats. Are there hybrids and purebreds for goats? I know I have more, like, I've had friends that do hogs, so I know a little bit more about that than I do goats, but you'll have that as well. There's certain classes where they call them like the hybrid class or the purebred. And so it kind of is the same thing. Is it all the same type in that class? Or are you having a mixture of different breeds in that class and that kind of thing? Or is the animal itself a hybrid between two different species, or two different breeds that now have made, a hybrid? So it's just like the border collie and the poodle. Now the offspring are considered a new category. That hybrid is the border doodle. Okay. So if we look at a few of these crosses, the red would be, like, you'd have to have big R to have a phenotype of all red. So you can have some all red cows. You can also have pretty much all white cows where there's no red. So if you take an all red times an all white, I know that if they're codominant, it has to be big R, big R, big W, big W. Here's the thing. Up until this point on our Punnett squares, our genotypes or our allele pairs have had to be the same letter. You just have a big version of it or a little version. Like, so for the tall plants, a capital T would be dominant to the short little t, right? Here we're using two separate letters. So only when you're dealing with codominance, if you think of co, for something to be together, there has to be at least two of them. So sometimes that helps people. But typically, like, the letters will be given to you and you'll recognize that you see, oh, I see a capital R and a capital W. That should trigger that you're going to be looking at something that's dealing with codominance. Okay, so if we're dealing with, and basically this is like homozygous dominant times another homozygous dominant, right? Homo meaning the same, big R, and those are the same, and then these two are the same, big W, big W. So when you do this cross, which is right here, all of the offspring will be roan. None of them will be red, none of them will be white. They will all be a combination of red fur and white fur kind of mixed in. And you can see this, okay? So you have a little bit more white here, a little bit more red here. This one's a little bit more spotty, more white here, red, red. But you have those fur kind of mixed in. This is what it is not. It is not a combination, or like you're putting red paint and white paint together, mixing them together and get something that's pink. It's not a mixing, it's they are both there and they are both dominant, so they're both gonna show, okay? So it's not a mixing. There's actually something called incomplete dominance that we don't talk about this year. But incomplete dominance is dealing with like taking the red and the white and mixing them together and you get something that's pink, right? You don't have a pink cow, right? So codominance is not the same. It's not a mixing of the colors. It's both colors are there and both are showing, okay? So then if you take one of these offspring, okay, and you take a red and a white, so a roan, pure or hybrid times another roan hybrid, you get one that would be red, two that would be roan, and one that would be white. So you get one red, two roan, one white. The genotypes would be big R, big R, big R, big W, and then big W, big W. Okay? So the roan coloring in animals is definitely one of the most common. Both alleles are equally dominant. Both alleles are expressed fully, resulting in a brand new phenotype. So the roan color in horses and cattle, the red and white hairs intermingle. It does not make a pink horse or a pink cow. Pretty weird. This also happens with feathers. So you can have an all black chicken, an all white chicken, or what they call a checkered chicken. Okay, so where the checkered chicken has some white feathers and some black feathers. All right, so the genotype for the black chicken would be big B, big B. The genotype for the white would be big W, big W. And so you do the cross and you get all checkered chickens. All right, so you have a brand new phenotype of checkered. It's not black and it's not white and it's not gray. The black and the white didn't get blended together like paint and turn into a gray chicken, all right? It has both the black and the white feathers showing. Okay, so here's some questions. And again, here's where the terminology and the language is super important. And so if you have like a piece of scrap paper or maybe like in the corner on your notes, you might want to do some of these, like jot them down on paper. Some you might be able just to do looking at them. But the phenotype is white, black, or this they're calling speckled instead of checkered, same thing. Genotypes, because it's our letters, homozygous dominant, and then this is basically heterozygous, right? One of each. Again, do you see any lowercase letters? Nope. So that makes it different from our normal, just, dominance and recessive.
Wouldn't we call the big B, big W heterozygous dominant?
Not hetero. Which one did you say? This one?
Yeah, the speckled one.
I would call it heterozygous. If it's co-dominant, you kind of know they're both dominant, because there isn't a co-recessive. Not that I've ever heard of, at least. So, you could say it wouldn't be wrong, but I don't think it's necessarily absolutely needed either. Okay, all right. Oh, there we go. So, is the white chicken homozygous, dominant, recessive, or heterozygous? So, when you're looking at the all white, what do you think? I'm gonna just kind of randomly call on some people, because I have about 3 or 4 of you that always like to answer, which I totally appreciate, but I also want to let some other people. So, let's see. Ava, what do you think? The white chicken.
Dominant.
Okay, it's gonna be dominant. Is it gonna be homozygous or heterozygous? What do you think?
Homozygous.
Good, so it's gonna be homozygous dominant. Same 2 letters, both of them capital, right? Big W, big W. Good. Black chicken. So the all black. Is it gonna be homozygous dominant, recessive, or is it gonna be heterozygous? What do you think, Dalton?
Homozygous dominant.
Yeah, but its genotype is gonna be the big B, big B. Very good. All right, speckled. Is it gonna be homozygous dominant, recessive, or heterozygous?
Heterozygous?
Very good. Heterozygous. And like David said, if you want to throw on the dominant at the end, I definitely wouldn't count that wrong, right? It's better to be more thorough than, like leave something out. Okay. Big B, big W for the genotype. Okay, here's where the paper is gonna come in handy, and I love it. Brandon already had his out and ready. That's fantastic. Nice. All right, so now we're gonna make a Punnett square for the parents with the following genotypes and phenotypes. So here we're given the phenotypes to cross. Here we're given the genotypes to cross. So again, that language and understanding what those things represent and mean is important. So you're gonna take a white times a white. What are the letters gonna have to be for that cross? And I'm gonna do mine over, let's see, if I do it here, can you guys see on that side of the room? Like Landon, can you see over there? If I write over here? Okay, well, I guess we'll just see. Thanks for helping me out there. Okay, so here's my Punnett square. A little bit faded. Let me try a different color.
That's a good Punnett square.
All right, so for a white times a white, tell me one of the parents. What will be the genotypes, Gilbert, that I need to use? Okay, both of them? Okay. And then what about for the other parent? What do you think?
Big B, big B.
Okay,
Wait,
for
no.
another white one?
Big W, big W.
Okay, so it says a white times a white. And a few of you had trouble with this when we did the Punnett squares with the white flower times another white flower. You guys didn't want to like cross the same thing by itself. So you just have to go with whatever it's asking you to set it up like. So you just have to identify the big W, big W, big W, big W. What are the offspring all gonna be? Big W, big W, right? You don't have any options. Okay? All right, let's try another one. Ava, were you good? Are you able to see it there then? Okay. Good deal. All right, so here's my next Punnett square. Man, my markers, you can tell it's the end of the year. They are super strong. All right, black times black. What are going to be the genotypes? What do you think, Aubrey? Give me one of the parents. Okay, and Anna, what's the other one going to be? Are we using littles if it's codominant though? What does dominant tell us to do? Make them both big. Very good. So there's the white parent. Oh, it'd help if I was on the right problem. Here's one of the black parents. Here's the other black. Okay. Well, if I do this, you're probably getting to the point where you can kind of see, okay, I don't really have any variety. They're all going to be black. right? So 100% of them will have the phenotype of black and have the genotype of big B, big B. Okay, so let's do the third one, a black times a white. And we're not gonna end up with some gray. What do you think, Kenna? Okay. So for which one though?
Oh.
So how would I make this one black?
Big, no.
Help her out, Dalton, what do you think?
Just big B, big B.
Big B, big B.
Oh,
You
yeah.
wanted to say it, but you didn't trust yourself. Big B for the black. And then how am I gonna show the white? Yeah.
Big W, big W.
Good. All right, now let's do our cross. BW, BW, and I'm putting the B first because it comes first in the alphabet. What are the offspring gonna all be? Kyle, what do you think? Yeah, and so what is their phenotype gonna be? What are they gonna physically look like? That'd be the genotype, for sure, they're heterozygous, but what are they physically gonna look like if they're, yeah. So phenotype's the physical appearance, genotype is the genetics or those letters. Good. Okay, let's do, now they're giving us the genotypes, and so all I have to do, so this is really like taking a speckled times a white. So try this one on your paper and see what you get. So we have a speckled times a white. Do you see any lowercase letters at all? Nope. So when you're dealing with codominance, you are dealing with all dominant letters, all those upper cases. Okay? So as we're looking at this, how many or what percentage are going to be speckled? Hunter, what do you think? From this cross, how many are going to be speckled? Yep. And then Ava, how many are going to be white? Very good. How many are going to be black, Braden? From this cross here that we did on the board.
2. Wait, black?
Yeah.
Isn't that, wouldn't, oh, 0.
Good. We've already got a 50% and a 50%. What are they always supposed to add up to?
100.
100%.
And 5.
Okay. Good. All right. Let's move on. All right. Here's a couple other interesting things. Obviously, we know that the chromosomes are what's going to determine gender. And so humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And so the last of these pairs, or chromosome number 23, is the one that is going to determine if the organism is a male or a female. So fathers actually determine the sex of the baby because a mom has an X and an X chromosome. A father has an X and a Y. So the female only has an X to offer. There's no Y to offer. So the Y is what determines the gender, basically. And so the father can either give an X to make a female offspring, or he can donate a Y to make a male offspring. All right, so the females have the XX. Mother can only give the X. And so if the X is inherited from the father, then you have the female offspring. If you have the Y that's being donated by the father, then you get a male offspring. So I think it's kind of important to understand like where that gender, how that gets determined biologically. Okay, and so here's the whole, karyotype, which is displaying all of the chromosomes, and then down here at chromosome number 23, this would be an X and a Y, so what would this be showing? Which gender person could this possibly be for? What do you think, Brandon?
No.
Very good. Okay. All right. I've never seen a pedigree on one of our state test questions before. If I don't cover it, there surely will be, and you guys will be like, she skipped it. So I don't want to do that to you. In all the years, I've never seen one though. So I don't feel like it's something that you have to like stress over. But I do want to at least cover it kind of quickly. So pedigrees are kind of cool. It's a diagram that's going to show like the occurrence or appearance of certain phenotypes of a certain gene from one generation to the next. Okay? And so we use symbols to represent people and lines to represent genetic relationships, like mates or offspring or siblings or things like that. All right, so squares represent males typically, and circles represent females. Horizontal lines are going to connect a male and female to show mating or breeding. So this can be done with animals, it can be done with people, like you might have a family tree, and in a way that's kind of like your pedigree. If you have animals that are registered, like I know our horses, we have like 3 and 4 and 5 generation pedigrees where you can see like, you know, how like where did that horse originally come from? Like what is its its breeding from generations back. Okay. It also shows vertical lines from a couple showing their offspring. So a line coming down from 2 people that mated, you know, obviously coming down that shows their offspring. Shaded shapes show people that are affected by a trait. So if that trait is some kind of syndrome or disease or sickness, that can be tracked sometimes through a pedigree. If it's only half shaded in, then they are a carrier for it. They don't have the trait showing, but they can pass it on to their offspring, right? So typically this is what happens if the trait is recessive. They might be a carrier for it, but they don't physically have the you know, whether, you know, like color blindness. You might have the trait for color blindness, but you aren't physically colorblind yourself, but you could pass it on to your offspring, possibly. So again, which shape represent females? Kenna? Good. And let's see. Eli, what shape represent boys?
There.
Good. All right, so here's generation 1, or the F1. So remember, shaded in means it's going to be somebody who is affected. We don't know what this is for. Like, it's just kind of a generic practice problem. Maybe it's color blindness, maybe it's Hodgkin's disease, like we don't really know. Maybe it's sickle cell. So in this generation, so here's the parents, and then here you have 4 offspring. Okay, this offspring has mated with this female, and they have 2 offspring. So that's kind of the arrangement of a pedigree. So in the first generation here, who is affected? I'm not sure how it wants it to answer. We'll see.
Female.
Okay, so in this one we have the female. If we're looking at 3 generations, then this would kind of like be the grandma, right? Grandkid, kid, grandma. That's kind of how they're looking at this. So here's our first generation. The grandma has whatever this is. Okay. Okay, here's another one. So sickle cell anemia is a disease where the red blood cells are supposed to be round shaped, kind of like discs, and they take on a sickle shape, like kind of like a quarter moon, like a kind of curved, almost like crescent moon. And so the round shape, think of like in a oh shoot, what's it called? Oh, I totally lost it.
Tire.
Oh my gosh. Lazy river. Think of a lazy river, like with the big inner tubes. like when the inner tubes are like bumping into each other and they kind of float and they hit off the side, but they're round so they don't stick, right? They just kind of, and even kind of like bumper cars, like if they were totally round, they would just hit each other and bounce off. You would never really get stuck. But the bumper cars are not round, right? So sometimes you could get jammed and stuck when you're in a bumper car. Well, the sickle cell, or kind of like that crescent moon shaped instead of being round, those red blood cells will sometimes get stuck and not flow through the vein the way that they should. And so that can cause some different problems. So we call that, they have a sickle shape, and so they call it sickle cell anemia. So it shows that Alfie has the sickle cells and Esme has the sickle cells. So the mom and the dad from that original generation both have it, okay? One of their daughters, Emily, you have Abby, Thomas, and Sophie. Those are their 4 offspring, and it shows Emily, Abby, and Sophie all have sickle cells, okay? And then you see Abby marries a person named Theo who has normal cells, and then they have 4 children, right? So we can use Punnett squares to set up to determine what's the chances that Harry will have, which is an offspring, and Bob, Harry has normal, Carrie has sickle, Fran has normal. We're trying to figure out what's the chances that Bob would have the sickle cell or the normal cell. So you can use a Punnett square to help with the pedigree, okay? So it says Alfie and Esme both have sickle cell disease. Of their 4 children, the 3 have sickle cell and 1 does not. One child, Abby, we kind of went through this. And so of their 4 children, 2 have normal, 1 has it, and we want to know the probability that Bob will have the sickle cell disease. And so if we know that Theo, the dad, is heterozygous, right? So if we assign, let me erase this over here. If we say that, let's use B for blood instead of S's or C's, because S's and C's don't do a good job with the capital and the lowercase. So if we know that Abby has it and it's recessive, so we know that she's going to be little b, right? The mom of Bob has it. So she has to be homozygous recessive. It's telling us that Theo is heterozygous. So what will his letters be? What will his genotype be? What do you think, Marcus? Very good. Big B, little b. He is one of each. So if I complete this cross, Bob here has what percentage of having sickle cells? 50%. Okay, and that would technically match, if he would end up with it, 2 of the children would have it, 2 of them would not. Okay, a few different things that I think are important to realize. Some things are hereditary. Ooh, sorry. And so if you're talking about, and this probably isn't something that's going to be asked too much either, but I think it's important, like when you hear these things, or you might know somebody with one of these syndromes or disorders, it is because, remember when you're looking at meiosis and mitosis, think of all the different processes and steps that have to happen. It's very easy for there to be a mistake or some kind of error that happens. And so sometimes during those processes, those things that happen get passed on, and they become like a trait that can be passed on generation to generation to generation. It wasn't just a random thing. It becomes kind of a more permanent, because the DNA itself actually changes. So if we call it sex-linked, it usually kind of follows the Y chromosome. Okay, hey, pay attention here. If it's on the Y chromosome, who is it going to affect more, boys or girls? Boys, because all boys have to have a Y. Girls don't have a Y. So that's why color blindness is more for men. They have also thought that possibly they're not like, haven't done all the research and don't know for sure, but there are more children that are autistic that are boys than girls. And so they think that there might be some kind of link or connection there. Also, a lot, thank goodness, of these disorders and syndromes that happen are recessive. So you have to have both of that trait from each parent for it to actually show. So a lot of people could be carriers for a lot of different things, but it's hard for, it to get passed on, which is usually a good thing. And then obviously there's just some random mistakes that happen. So Down syndrome is, I think I told you, it's when there's an extra chromosome on number 21. All right, see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic afternoon.